Hey everybody, welcome back to Greg's Grooves. Today is going to be another video on The Who. I told you in my last video on Live at the Oval 71 that in a couple days I was going to be seeing them at Madison Square Garden in New York City. I live in the suburbs of New York City, so every time I've seen The Who, it's either been at Madison Square Garden or one of the local venues. I've been up to Bridgeport to see them. I've been to the Brendan Byrne Arena, or whatever they're calling it now, in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And I lost count. I've seen them over a dozen times between 2002 and the present. My dad was a massive Who fan, as I've discussed in videos before, and I became a massive Who fan just kind of through osmosis. And the first show we went to was in August of 2002, shortly after John Entwistle's death. And now 23 years later, my dad and I had the pleasure of seeing them on August 30th, 2025. And let me start by saying I did not have high hopes for the concert. If you've seen earlier videos where I talk about whether or not I'm going to buy tickets for the tour, I was on the fence. Look, if it's really the last time I get to see them, I couldn't take a chance on not going. But the Who Hits 50 tour was very disappointing to me. Especially after the Quadrophenia tour in 2012, which I actually thought was really good. The Who Hits 50 tour was it was not it. The Who Hits Back, Zach Starkey on electric drums, it irritated me. It felt wrong. I'm happy to say that this past performance on the Song Is Over tour far exceeded my admittedly low expectations. First thing that stuck out to me is Roger's voice. Whatever he's been doing as far as voice preparation is hugely improved. In the Quadrophenia tour in like 2012, 2013, it was clear his voice was suffering. He was struggling with anything that wasn't in a very limited range. He's gotten some of his range back, which is amazing for a man his age. The second thing that stuck out to me is, even though I was a big defender of Zach Starkey and wasn't too fond of the way his firing was handled and him being fired at all, I gotta give it up for Scott DeVores. He injected some life into the performance that maybe he's been missing for a while. I think that they were using click tracks because tempos were far more consistent and more sprightly than they have been on other recent tours. And I think that really helped give the songs energy that sometimes with Zach in the last decade, they've been lacking a little bit. Pete was Pete. He always, especially at MSG, it seems, loves to comment on how easy it is for him to do this job. He made a point of that to the audience. It's like the third or fourth time I've seen him that he likes to comment to the audience on how easy performing is for him, but he really does make it look easy. And his voice is remarkably vibrant for someone his age. I mean, anytime he takes the lead on like Eminence Front, we're going to talk about the set list in a second, but they did Long Live Rock. He took the lead on that. I mean, he's still got a very boisterous sort of voice, which is kind of ironic, seeing as in the early era of The Who, in that 1960s era, his voice was more like the soft sort of counterbalance to Daltrey's brute force. But, things have kind of changed over the years. Let's go through this set list. So I'm biased. I think they put on some of their best performances in New York, and looking at set lists, it's obvious that they try to throw in a few sort of unexpected twists when they play New York. Like I said, they threw Long Live Rock into the set list, which they hadn't played since 2014, so there was really no expectation that that was going to happen. Otherwise, the set list was pretty much as it's been for most of the tour, starting off what I Can't Explain into Substitute, which, to me, that's how The Who should open a show unless it's the early 70s and we can open with Heaven and Hell. But yeah, I Can't Explain Substitute should always be the 2 opening numbers. A few years back on, I think it was the Who Hits Back tour, or it was the Who Hits 50 tour, they opened with the Tommy medley, which was really interesting as far as a way to start the show. But the problem is the momentum of the show really fell off after that. I think starting with their early singles definitely is the way to go. Leading into Who Are You, which really got the crowd going, because I'll be honest, I think there's a large chunk of the crowd that knows the Who's Next songs. Bob O'Reilly, Won't Get Fooled Again. They know Who Are You because they watched CSI or whatever. I think there's a lot of people who are, they're fans. I'm not going to try to take that away from them, but they don't know the back catalog. They don't know anything maybe Tommy, and if what they know from Tommy's Pinball Wizard, and We're Not Gonna Take It, but they probably think it's See Me Feel Me. You get what I'm saying. So when Who Are You hit, it's like, all right, everyone in the 18,000 person audience now has something to latch on to. They did a really good version of The Seeker after that I thought was very well performed. Into Long Live Rock, and then a little bit of a Tommy medley, Pinball Wizard, See Me Feel Me. I would have liked, and I've discussed on the channel before that Tommy's not my favorite Who album by any stretch, but I would have liked a little more from Tommy, some nod to Amazing Journey, Sparks, The Overture. Just give me like a little more of that. That didn't happen this time, and I could kind of understand why. Then they went into Love Ain't for Keepin', which they probably could have kept. It wasn't the best version of it, to be honest. Behind Blue Eyes really took on a very melancholy tenor. I think the fact that this was going to be their last concert at Madison Square Garden, which Pete and Roger both alluded to, that this was in all likelihood their last performance, at least as The Who, in New York City. I got a little weepy-eyed during Behind Blue Eyes, I have to admit. And I think I wasn't the only one in the audience. And there's something about when they hit that, the kind of hard rock part of Behind Blue Eyes, that you really sensed their age. I don't mean that in a negative way, because it was still powerful and moving, but just in a very different sort of sentimental way. Behind Blue Eyes then went into Eminence Front, which, as I said, Pete sings better now than he ever has, and I thought that was a highlight. There were definitely younger fans for whom this was like a highlight of the show, which is very interesting because It's Hard as an album is obviously not super well regarded in The Who's discography, but that song I think has only gained in popularity and appreciation over the last, 43-ish years since it came out. They did My Generation into Cry If You Want. I've always thought Cry If You Want is one of the highlights from the last 2 albums, with Kenny Jones. And I like that they play it. Roger clearly likes it. I think some diehard fans like it. I think that part of the My Generation medley is definitely lost on most of the audience. They played You Better You Bet, which made me happy because, again, from the last 2 albums with Kenny Jones, Face Dances and It's Hard, I love a lot of those songs, and You Better You Bet I think is right up there with some of the Who's best songs. Then they did Going Mobile. Pete's brother took the lead on vocals, and nothing against Simon. I think he's incredibly talented, and I think his voice is strong and emulates a younger Pete, but I don't know. I'd rather, especially on this last tour, hear Pete and Roger sing. Sorry, Simon. Then we got a very nice heap of selections from Quadrophenia, which made me happy, as that's my favorite album, as I've mentioned many times. We got The Real Me, I'm One, 515, Love Reign Over Me. Got 4 tracks from Quadrophenia, so I was very excited about that. 515 had a little bit of a false start, but nothing crazy. If you saw my review of Roger's solo performance at the Capitol Theater in Portchester, I mean, that was just rife with false starts and awkwardness. This performance was not like that. There was a couple, who were losing at moments, but altogether, it was very strong. After the Quadrophenia selections, we got Won't Get Fooled Again, Bob O'Reilly, which, you know, what a way to close a set list, right? Like, the 2 most notable songs probably in their whole selection of tracks definitely got the audience up on their feet. And, you know, I don't have a lot of money. I'm sitting up in the nosebleeds every time I go to MSG, and sometimes it's hard to get people in the top of the bowl up on their feet, and everyone was standing for the entirety of the last 2 tracks. Really, from Love Reign Over Me on, everyone was standing. I think people got on their feet at the end of Love Reign Over Me because Roger's vocal performance really, for a man his age, was impressive. Now, I do have to note a couple things before I get to the end of the set list here. They piped in the studio screams on Love Reign Over Me and Won't Get Fooled Again. I don't want Roger screaming at 80-something years old. I get that that's not something he can or should physically do anymore. But maybe there's a solution that doesn't include pumping in the scream. You know, I think most of the audience is none the wiser, but it's weird to me. I don't know. Give me something else. I don't have the solution. There's no reason for a solution, as this is the last tour, but that's just my 2 cents. And, yeah, don't pipe in those screams was one of the takeaways. And then the other takeaway I kind of had is the encore, or lack thereof. So after Baba O'Reilly, they played The Song Is Over, which I guess is a nod to the tour name, the moment that we're in with this band. Maybe also kind of cheeky, tongue-in-cheek about the performance with Zach Starkey a few months ago. Maybe that's reading too much into it. But it was a pretty weak performance from the whole band, and they took out the bridge, the 3rd verse, and the 2nd chorus, so they played like a minute and a half of The Song Is Over. So it was like, you're really going to end the show with that as far as like the whole band sort of thing? I would have liked them to place The Song Is Over before Baba O'Reilly, maybe after Won't Get Fooled Again, or even before Won't Get Fooled Again, so you end with Won't Get Fooled Again and Baba O'Reilly. And then Roger and Pete alone on stage did Tea in Theater, which I've become accustomed to. And, you know, it's a nice moment that the 2 of them can spend with the fans, devoid of all the other distractions. So I have nothing against it. Maybe not the way other people would want the show to end, but I get why they do it. And I appreciate it, and I definitely got a little misty-eyed as they exited the stage for what's probably the last time I'll see them live and in person. Overall, way better performance than on the last couple tours. Everything was much tighter, much more together. Scott DeVore's brought a lot of energy to the performance. I think their probable use of a click track has really revived some of the energy. I think Roger has really managed to restore a lot of his vocal prowess, and he still tries to hit the original notes on a lot of songs. Let's just get rid of the artifice. We don't need the pumped-in screams. We don't need all the extras. Just give me what they got. And Roger and Pete still have a surprising amount. So if you're still going to see them on this tour, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. I certainly was. If you've seen them recently, I know they've been in Toronto recently, they were in Atlantic City the other day, please comment. I want to know what you thought of the show. Did you have the same experience as me, or did you go in with maybe unrealistic expectations? Drop it down in the comments and I'll be sure to get back to you. So see you next time on Greg's Grooves.